This tutorial is over the website readworks.org. This site requires teachers to sign up and their students to sign up as well. Teachers can import the classes or the class rosters, or they can send emails to the students to have them join. The purpose of this website and the reason that I've pulled it as something that I would use in my classroom is to provide differentiated reading sets based around themes and topics. This allows students to build background knowledge. In ELA, we often have a particular topic that we're covering or a theme to a unit, but we don't necessarily have all the history and the background information that we need to do the reading with some context. So that's one of the prime features of this particular website. So it seems that this website, one of the things that really kind of prides itself on is this activity called Article a Day, where students you can choose a topic for students to build their background knowledge, and then it gives them a different article each day. They read it, there's activities, vocabulary, but really it's this idea of providing reading stamina for students, getting them to read every single day. There are a couple of different features to selecting the text. You can choose the type of text that you want, the type of activities you want, the grade level that you want, the topics that you want. Once you go into these featured reading sets, for instance, we read the poem Pow Wow at the End of the World in 8th grade this year, and I had to go and find my own background information on Native Americans to talk about some of the history they experience, because it's just not covered at this point in our American history class at the 8th grade level. So if I were to assign this text to my students, there would be several things I would be thinking about. Not all of my students read at the same Lexile or even Lexile range. So while this is a 9-10 Lexile and should be something that an 8th grader can read, there are going to be students who are below grade level in that. So if we go over to the step read section, it actually gives me the exact same information, but in a Lexile level of 630. I can even drop it down to 510 for those students who might need it. It has vocabulary sets with it, and then it also has a set of questions so that students are not just reading, we're asking them to make sure that they are comprehending what they read as well. In order to assign a text set like this to your students, you have to first set up a class. So I've already set up my 4th, 5th hour block in here. I'm going to keep it hidden though for my students' privacy, but I just want to show you that that you can create a class in here. You can import it directly from Google Classroom, which works really well for me since that is something that I already use in my class, or you can create it completely from scratch. And then use Google sign-in for the students, or if your school does not use a Google account for their email, then the students would use a class code, sign in through whatever other way that they would sign in and join your roster. Once you do have your class set up, the first thing that this website recommends that you do is a reading mindset snapshot. And this is actually something that I was really on board with this website when I read it, when I found it and read about it. This reading mindset snapshot, it helps you find out what your students' reading interests are, which we know is only going to help them want to read more. So it's an online survey that asks their feelings about reading. How do you feel about reading in your free time, after school? And then it takes a survey over their interests. I actually do an interest and reading interest survey at the beginning of the year with all of my students, but I use a paper copy, and it's kind of big. It's about 3 pages long, and as soon as my students see that it's a 3-page survey over reading on paper, for those students who do not like reading, they immediately are shutting down. So I like that this is, it's a little bit more simple for students to complete, and it still allows me to collect that same data that I would collect through my paper copy. So this is definitely a feature of this website that I find to be one of the biggest draws to it. Obviously the text sets, they're going to be helpful, and allow me to schedule out that background building so that I am not standing in front of my class lecturing every time I have to build that background information. The students can read on their own and gather that information on their own. So this has been my tutorial of readworks.org. Oh, real quickly, I forgot to go through my IST standards. So for this tutorial, I hit on IST standard E for Educators 7B, which is use technology to design and implement a variety of formative and summative assessments that accommodate learner needs, provide timely feedback to students, and inform instruction. It all goes back to this reading mindset snapshot survey. I feel like this really is a formative, almost like a pre-assessment, for me to gain that information from my students that will then help me decide how I'm going to instruct and what will be beneficial for all my students. Additionally, I hit on ISTE standard E for Educator 5C, which is explore and apply instructional design practice principles to create innovative digital learning environments that engage and support learning. So I have, like I said, I had already used Newsela before, but I did go looking for something that would be sort of a supplement to the features I lost through in Newsela when they added their premium feature. Again, it's just the idea of supporting differentiated learning for my students. That's why I used Newsela before, and so since I didn't have the access to the parts that I wanted, I went looking for those websites that would help me maintain that differentiated learning for my students. So that, again, is my tutorial for readworks.org.